Hi Laurie, it's Martin Hill, the swimsuit coach, just looking at your video that you sent in to me. What I'm going to do now is just use some software to analyse it, and what you see here is the raw video that you sent across, or you placed onto YouTube for me. And what you can see, I've had a quick look through this beforehand, but what you can see is that each time you do push off, your stroke rate is quite high and it drops consistently to about 74 strokes a minute, which is fine. There's not an issue there at all. But I'll come back to that later on when we look at what's happening underwater. I'll just stop it, we'll just backtrack slightly here. Good to see that you're bilateral breathing, and your head position is in quite a good position. Probably lift slightly high when you do breathe, but not massively, and you can see there where your face is and where your head is looking, probably slightly backwards and upwards, I would say. But not a major issue. Ideally what I would say is if you were effectively looking straight out to your left or right hand side when you breathe, in other words looking straight into the camera, but overall not a massive issue. The important things are what we see underneath the water now, and I noticed in this one the centre section is actually slowed down, but I'll use the software on here to show you when we get clear of the bubbles. We'll ignore your right hand, we'll look at your left hand as it comes into the water, and you can see the trajectory is going quite quickly, and it's going piercing down into the water down there, which is good. But you can then see what actually happens is that instead of continuing with that trajectory downwards, you then flatten out. So from your shoulders, your arm is then out straight, and what happens then is that you can see that your arm is pushing down quite straight quite a long time. And what effectively happens there is that this arm with it out straight there is pushing water downwards, and whilst your body position is quite high and you're kicking quite hard, and I'll come back to that later, whilst your body position is high, what that is doing is actually lifting your front end. In other words, you're pushing water downwards rather than catching and pushing water backwards. And if we then follow that through, you can see that it's not really until you're down this part of the stroke that you're actually catching water, as it were, and pushing it backwards. And then if we watch your right hand, which is just hidden behind that arrow, you can see it goes into the water, and again it's quite long and flat. And in particular, note here what's happening, because you can see now that your face is out of the water as you're turning to breathe. This similarly is out long and flat, and probably slightly worse than that is actually upwards. In other words, your elbow started to drop. What it looks like is happening here, in particular while you're breathing, is that this right arm is acting as a support to help lift your head out of the water. And again, what's happening is that is pushing water down there. You can see then that very similar, although it's a much shallower trajectory as it goes into the water, very similar to your right hand and left hand in terms of going out straight, pushing down, going out straight. This is where you slowed the video down, but going out straight and pushing down. And what ideally we'd like to see, and I'll go through this now and show you there. Ideally what we'd like to see is from your shoulder, which is there, out to your elbow, is then for your forearm to be going down there. And what we want to try and see is this happening with your forearm. In other words, from your elbow back to your shoulder stays high and stays quite close to the surface of the water. But the first part of the stroke, the catch, is actually where what you're getting into the vertical forearm position, or the early vertical forearm, which is effectively this position. And what you're trying to aim for is to a slight internal rotation on your shoulder, bend the elbow so that your hand comes down, so that you've got a flat plane from the fingertips, firm wrist right the way through your wrist up your forearm, so that this then effectively becomes your paddle or your oar to push water back with. Because what's happening is that you're now using that as a way of pushing water downwards as opposed to catching water and pushing backwards. Okay, if I show you, whilst we're in this position, if if I show you a video which will hopefully demonstrate this really well. This is a lady called Shelley Taylor-Smith. Can't quite remember where the underwater part is. Here we are. You can see there what you could say is a slight dropped elbow, but in real terms what happens very, very quickly is just like I've explained. So from your shoulder through to your elbow stays quite high and close to the water, but you do get this firm from there, firm through the wrist, through to the fingertips, so as a long straight paddle. And that then is what you use to push water away with. And if you watch exactly the same left and right, what happens is that elbow gets bent really quickly, gets into a vertical position and pushes the water away. So ideally, what we'll be looking for you, Laurie, is to try to get to that position. And if we go through here, we see there, what we'll be looking for here is for that to be more down there. And you can see that it does start to happen, but it's very late in the stroke. And again, if we watch your left hand, it goes in nicely, and then effectively stretches out, and then pushes down. And again, what we'd be looking for is for this to be bending down here. As a reference, and as a way of thinking about this, if I draw there, that top line is the surface of the water. The bottom line is a depth or a channel of water of say 20 to 30 centimetres. What I'd like you to visualise effectively is that what you're trying to do is to keep your shoulder and your elbow as horizontal as you can do in that channel, and then drop your forearm and hand down through it, so that in this position you'd be from there to there and then down to there. And what you could also think of is what you're trying to do here is to wrap your hand around a solid wall. So this solid wall here is what you're trying to wrap your arm around and then effectively pull against it, or pull yourself over the top of the wall. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's trying to get you to visualise a way of anchoring your hand and arm over something solid and pulling your body over the top of it. And if we just follow this through, you'll see as it repeats itself, you'll see it goes through and carries on doing exactly the same. And this way stroke rate is reduced down to about 74, which I think is probably your current mean average stroke rate. I would say to do some of the techniques that I'll give you, you probably want to start to look at slowing down first of all, not because it's something that you need to do full time, but just slow down so that you can get the technique right first, and then your stroke rate I think will start to increase again and probably go even slightly higher than you are. I've stopped it here, close to the end of this lane, but I may have to backtrack a little bit. But what I was, I'll go back. What I was looking for is your kick, because your kick is really, really strong. In fact, if I go back to the beginning of this lane, your kick is really, really strong, and I'm sure you're aware of this. I don't know if it's something that you've been swimming for a long time and it's something that you've adopted from a swimming background, but you can see how strongly your legs are kicking. And if we watch that for a while, you see how really kicking and propulsive they are. If I show you again Shelley Taylor-Smith, exactly the same, but she has got what is called 2-beat leg kick. And if what you're doing is swimming long distances, then kicking the way you're kicking is very, very energy expensive. In other words, what you're doing is kicking really hard and using big muscles, and those big muscles take lots of energy that you could be far better used in propulsing from the front. And if you kick really hard, your kick is really effective and strong, but if you kick really hard, you're probably wasting lots of energy and not a great deal of propulsion benefit. And most long distance swimmers swim with this, what is called a 2-beat leg kick. I think if you could reduce your kick to this kind of style, you should feel much more relaxed and probably a lot more effective as well, because you'll be able to focus more on your arm propulsion. I'll just close that one, and we'll go back down to here now. This is the overhead shot, and that is really good alignment. You've got a really good style there. You can see how strong your legs are kicking, and your body rotation is really good. It's nice to see that you're breathing bilaterally. Your hand entry is really good, nice and straight. There is one thing which we'll see on this shot, which I think we could perhaps look at. And again, I'll show you the video of Shelley Taylor Smith, but you can see just from that shot that this right arm, how it's just going long and straight, and then as you're turning to breathe, your left hand comes in, and I think we'll see the same long and straight. And also, which is the part I'm going to mention, you see how wide it is, because if you think about what we just saw on the side shot, what we'd ideally like is that to be probably slightly higher and your elbow, but then also for your forearm to be down here, and you can really see how wide it goes. It's partly to do with breathing at that stage, but even if you watch your right hand, you can see how straight it is. And so what we'd ideally like to see is that much tighter, so probably slightly higher elbow, but much tighter there, so your hand is probably not too far off below your shoulder when you're swimming. No. Because I think you've got the makings of very good stroke, and the makings of much more speed. It's just a few tweaks here and there that will help you to generate that. If I'll go back and show you this one again, and I'll find this particular spot, because I think you find this quite useful in terms of looking at the catch on the early vertical forearm, because you can see if I stop it there, you can see this hand as it goes into the water very quickly. It drops down, and from the elbow it drops down into that vertical forearm. You can see that position there from shoulder to elbow is ahead of itself, and this is now dropping down to catch the water there. And from that position, you've caught, or your hand is now catching all the water, or is over that wall that you imagine, and then you're just pulling yourself over the top of it. And what you'll also notice that that stroke and that high elbow is exactly the same on left and right, and also exactly the same whether she's breathing or not breathing. And there's a drill that I'll give in the sessions that is a single paddle catch drill, and what you're trying to do is effectively concentrate the whole catch on the left hand when you're breathing to the right hand side. So you have a single paddle on your left hand, swim normally, but as you're breathing to your right hand side, really focus on catching with your left hand and with the left paddle. I think you'll find that quite useful in terms of feeling that extra catch. If we go back, we just go back now and look at your video, because in essence, I think the key points that we've got to really work on is to get you catching much more effectively. Your alignment is not too bad. There's a drill that I'll give you that is effectively just a streamlined push-off drill, which is really good for getting that position really streamlined. And what I want to try to imagine is this hand, as you are there, is really good. This hand is placed on top of the other hand. The head is probably slightly high there, so it could be a little bit lower. But I want you to imagine that you're really stretching out. So with your hand here, imagine that you're just pulling yourself forward, so you're really making yourself as long and as thin as you can be. And we'll start off first of all with your legs not kicking, not doing a dolphin kick, just keeping them nice and streamlined. And just imagine that you're pulling yourself nice and long and tight, and trying to just grow yourself by, I don't know, 2 or 3 centimeters at least. So I think in terms of the key parts, what we need to do is really get you catching much more effectively. And I'll give you some drills and I'll show you videos in a minute of those. Get you catching much more effectively, get the feel for the water much more effective. Probably slow your stroke rate down slightly, but that is mainly so that you can concentrate on doing the drills that you need to do. Look at a little bit of streamlining as I've just described, and probably, and this is something that you'll have to work on yourself because there's no real drill for doing it, but I would really strongly recommend that you try to reduce your leg kick, because your body position is good, and I think it's wasting lots of energy from your point of view to be kicking the way you're kicking. And hopefully, as you develop a much better catch, all of that will start to come into play, and you'll probably find that your kick is probably less effective, and you've become less reliant on it, if that makes sense. But what I'll do now is I'll just show you some drills that's from a catch point of view. This is a really basic but really effective drill for doing this. And effectively what you're doing is you're going out to the front. I'll put a link into these drills onto the swim sessions, but just quickly talk through this now. The idea is that you're going out and probably stretching out a little bit too far there, but stretch out and downwards so that you're going out and down around that wall, but effectively keeping that elbow really high and pushing right back really strongly. And if we look at the overhead shot, you can see it's just a straight out and straight back, arms under the water the whole time. So that's one I'll get you to do. Sculling, again, I'll put a link onto the sessions for this, but this is a really good one for initially getting the feel of the water on the hand and forearms, and there is some commentary on this that you'll be able to listen to when you look at it on YouTube. But this is a really good one. I would imagine that you're probably quite good at this, but it's one that you can integrate with some doggy paddle as well, as I'll put in the swim sessions. Another one which is good, probably, I'm not sure whether you've tried the fist drill, but the palm paddles are effectively trying to replicate that fist position, but in a more natural way. In other words, keeping your hands exactly where they should be. The paddle eliminates the water, the feel for the water, and again encouraging you to get that vertical forearm position. They also give you feedback as to whether your hand is tracking properly under the water. And I think in terms of real drills, put some more in the swim sessions for you, but in terms of drills, they will really get you working properly and effectively. But think about slowing your stroke rate down, think about reducing your kick. Your breathing looks to be okay, but it may be something that breathing, when I say that I mean exhalation, maybe something that you want to consider being aware of more, if you like. But in essence, I would say look at your catch, slight alignment, and reducing your kick. Hope that's all makes sense, and I'll send you some sessions with this to go with. Bye.